My daughter Avery looked me straight in the eye across the dinner table and said, with a perfectly calm voice, "You're not coming to Hawaii, Mom. You can't afford a place like that." Her husband, Logan, let out a quiet laugh and added, "Let's not make things awkward for everyone. It's better this way." I didn't say a word. I just smiled, nodded politely, and reached for my glass of water as if the words didn't sting. But they did. Not because I wanted their trip or their approval, but because, in that moment, I realized they had already decided who I was, a woman who had nothing left to offer. What they didn't know was I'd already booked my own trip to Hawaii, a different resort, a private jet, my own driver, no noise, no announcement, just quiet preparation. And when the moment came and they saw me step out of that black car toward the tarmac, they didn't know what hit them. Let me tell you exactly how it unfolded. I placed the last of the roasted vegetables on the platter and called out, "Dinner's ready." The table was already set, plates mismatched from years of use, the old wooden table worn smooth in the middle, surrounded by the same chairs my late husband, Margaret, and I had bought when Avery was just a toddler. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm ours. Logan walked in first, phone in hand, barely glancing up as he slid into his seat. Avery followed behind, Zoe and Jack trailing her like ducklings, already bickering about who would get the bigger biscuit. I smiled as I handed one to each of them before they even sat down, hoping to head off the squabble. "Smells good, Grandma," Zoe said sweetly, her face bright. Jack gave me a quick, shy smile before digging into his mashed potatoes. We were only a few bites in before Avery spoke, her voice clipped with excitement. "So, Mom, Logan and I finalized everything today. The flights are booked, the spa reservations are in, and the kids are beyond thrilled." I looked up from my plate, smiling. "Oh? Going somewhere special?" "Hawaii," Avery said like it was the most casual thing in the world. "Grand Wailea Resort, oceanfront suites. It's going to be absolutely amazing." My smile held. "That sounds beautiful. Hawaii's always been on my list." There was a pause. Avery set down her fork, glanced at Logan, and then gave me a tight smile. "Oh, just to be clear, Mom, this is just us. Immediate family. Logan's parents are coming, of course, but..." Logan cut in smoothly. "It's really more of a curated family experience. And to be perfectly honest, Lorraine, it's not cheap. We're spending almost $800 a night on the rooms. Flights were $1,500 each. It's just not something you could contribute to." My hand paused above my plate. The room fell quiet except for the clink of Jack's spoon in his peas. Avery's voice tightened. "It's not about anything personal, Mom. But let's be real. You've been struggling financially for a while now. It wouldn't be right to expect you to keep up with something like this. We don't want you to feel out of place." Logan chuckled under his breath. "Yeah, it's a 5-star resort. Dress codes, formal dinners. It's just different from what you're used to." It wasn't what they said that hurt the most. It was the tone. The smooth confidence that they had every right to judge what I could and couldn't afford. As if they knew me. As if I hadn't raised Avery with scraped-together pennies, skipped meals so she could have ballet classes, said no to myself 1,000 times so I could say yes to her. I set down my fork slowly and folded my hands in my lap. Zoe looked up, puzzled. "But Grandma's family too. Why can't she come?" Avery reached for her wine glass. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Grandma, well, she's not really into those kinds of vacations. And it would just be harder for her, you know? All the walking, the schedule, the luxury. We want her to be comfortable." Logan leaned back, his chair creaking. "And let's be honest, the place isn't exactly Goodwill friendly." I smiled then, not because it was funny, not even because I was trying to keep the peace. I smiled because in that moment, something in me shifted. A quiet line was drawn. "I understand," I said softly, reaching for the water pitcher. "You're right. I probably wouldn't fit in." Avery looked relieved. "I'm glad you see it that way." Jack mumbled, still pushing his carrots around. "Can't we all just go camping instead?" Avery laughed. "Honey, your daddy worked really hard for this. It's our time to enjoy something a little more elevated." As the dinner continued, they launched into the details: the helicopter transfer, the wine tastings, the private cabanas. They listed plans like shopping lists, spa appointments, 5-course meals, luxury excursions. Every word was a reminder, a barrier, a line drawn in dollar signs and disdain. At one point, Avery offered me more coffee, her voice suddenly bright, falsely cheerful. I declined. "I think I'll start cleaning up," I said, gathering a few plates. Logan pushed back his chair. "We should get going anyway. Early flight tomorrow. Lots to prep." Avery stood and kissed my cheek. Her lips were cool, her presence even cooler. "We'll send pictures," she said lightly. "Maybe next time we can plan something more reasonable." I watched them help the kids into jackets, listened to the zip of coats and rustling bags, the murmured goodbyes. The front door closed behind them, and the engine of Logan's car faded into the distance. Silence returned to the house, a silence thick and hollow all at once. I stood at the window, watching the red glow of their taillights vanish down the street. My smile faded, replaced by something calmer, firmer. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I didn't notice. They thought they knew who I was, what I could afford, what I deserved. But they didn't know about the company I'd built from nothing with Margaret, the software we'd sold, the quiet investment returns, the lawyer I still spoke to every quarter. They didn't know that while they judged me by my frayed flannel shirts and thrift store dishes, I could buy out their entire vacation with the interest from my portfolio in a single week. They had written me off, brushed me aside, and that was fine. Because some lessons are learned not through confrontation, but by letting the truth arrive in silence. Avery thought she was leaving me behind, but she had no idea. I began scraping the dishes slowly, methodically. The last of Jack's peas rolled into the trash, Zoe's half-eaten roll wrapped and tucked away for later. I opened the drawer to retrieve the sponge, and something slipped. An old business card, wet with a trace of soap, floated to the surface. My old company logo. I held it between my fingers. Lorraine Brooks, founder and CEO. I looked down at it, water dripping from the corner, and I smiled again. But this time, it wasn't sad. It wasn't bitter. It was the beginning of something, a quiet resolve. I wouldn't say a word. I just let them find out, in my own time, and in my own way. That night, after the house had settled into its usual quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table, a warm mug of tea between my hands, and the dishes from dinner still drying in the rack. The scent of roasted vegetables lingered faintly in the air, mingled with the soft sweetness of the candle Zoe had given me. I hadn't turned on the TV or picked up a book. I wasn't looking for distraction. I needed to remember, not just the ache I felt from Avery's words at dinner, but the long path that had led me here. The choices I'd made, the silence I'd kept, and the promise I'd honored long after the only person who'd asked it of me was gone. It was 6 years ago now, though it felt like both yesterday and another life entirely. Margaret and I had spent the better part of a decade building our software company from scratch. We were late bloomers in tech, they said. Too old for startup culture, too slow for venture capital. But we knew better. We had something most didn't: patience, resilience, and decades of knowing how to survive when the world expected us to fail. We built it from our garage, then our kitchen, and finally a tiny office space above a bakery downtown. While Avery was in college, Margaret and I were debugging code between dinner shifts and late-night cups of black coffee. We mortgaged the house once, almost twice. We skipped vacations, took on part-time gigs to fund the prototype, and poured everything we had into making something that actually helped people. And then, one crisp October morning, it all came together. I remember the boardroom, the polished mahogany table, the buyer across from us in a crisp navy suit, probably half our age. He was impressed with our authentication software, called it the future of digital protection. He shook our hands, signed the contract, and transferred $15 million into our account like it was just another Tuesday. $15 million. Margaret and I left the building in stunned silence, gripping each other's hands like we were afraid one of us might float away. We didn't go out to celebrate. We didn't book a cruise or buy a new car. We picked up Chinese takeout, drove home, and ate it in our pajamas, sitting cross-legged on the couch like we had during the early days of our marriage. Later that night, sitting at the same table, Margaret stirred her tea slowly and looked at me the way only she could, thoughtful, steady, loving, with a layer of wisdom that always caught me off guard. "We did it," I said quietly. She smiled. "We did." And then, after a long pause, she said, "Promise me something." Anything. Don't tell Avery. Not yet. I blinked. Why not? She took my hand, still warm from the tea. Because I want to see who she really is. Before she knows what we have. Before she thinks there's something to gain. I hesitated. Avery's not like that. She might not be, Margaret said gently, but I want to be sure. Money doesn't change people, Lorraine. It shows them. And we've worked too hard for this to be taken for granted. It felt dramatic at the time. Cautious, maybe even a little unfair. But I agreed, because Margaret had never asked for much. And when she did, I listened. For the next year, we kept it quiet. We met with financial advisors, set up accounts, arranged investments. We didn't buy a bigger house. We didn't upgrade the car. We lived the way we always had, frugal, grounded, unremarkable. And then, before we'd even gotten to enjoy it, she was gone. The cancer came fast, ruthless. Margaret faced it the way she faced everything, with clarity and grace. She didn't want hospitals or long goodbyes. She wanted home. So I gave her that. I slept beside her in the living room for 3 months, held her hand through every wave of pain, read her the same book over and over until her eyes couldn't stay open anymore. She passed away on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, just after I'd made her a cup of tea she never got to drink. After the funeral, the silence in this house felt unbearable. I moved her slippers into the closet, donated most of her clothes. But I kept her teacup, the one with the tiny crack on the rim, and her garden gloves, still dusted with soil. And I kept her promise. I didn't tell Avery. Not when she asked if I needed help paying for new tires. Not when she offered me one of Logan's old coats, saying it was better than nothing. Not even when she started talking down to me at family dinners, correcting my stories, explaining things I'd spent a career building. Because I was waiting, watching. And over the next 3 years, I saw the shift. Avery had always been strong-willed, always ambitious. But somewhere along the way, ambition turned to entitlement. She didn't just want to succeed, she wanted to be seen succeeding. Social media posts became more curated, conversations more shallow. She began surrounding herself with people who admired her lifestyle, not her heart. I started to notice how she treated me in front of others, how she'd apologize for my quirky habits, joke about my thrift store aesthetic, and change the subject when people asked what I used to do for work. At first, I gave her grace. I figured she was just adjusting to adulthood, motherhood, trying to fit into a world that judged women harshly for every imperfection. But then came the exclusions. Thanksgiving without an invitation, Christmas gifts that were lost in the mail, a birthday brunch where I was seated next to the kitchen door while Logan's mother received flowers and champagne. And through it all, I said nothing. Because Margaret had asked me to wait. Because I wanted to believe Avery would come back around. Because I wanted to believe that somewhere beneath the curated image and cool dismissals was the little girl who used to hold my hand during thunderstorms and fall asleep on my lap during story time. But tonight, after that dinner, after the way she looked me in the eye and told me I couldn't come to Hawaii because I didn't belong, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It was acceptance. She had shown me who she was, and Margaret had been right all along. I stood up from the table, poured the cold tea down the sink, and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. The woman looking back at me was older, yes? Her hair was more silver than brown now. Her hands were lined from years of work. But her eyes were clear, her spine still straight. I wasn't fragile, I wasn't obsolete, and I wasn't invisible. I walked into the living room and picked up the small portfolio I kept in the drawer under the side table. Inside were the passwords to my investment accounts, the contact card for my financial advisor, and the balance sheet I updated every 6 months. 15.8 million. That's what 3 years of smart investing had done. More than enough to live comfortably. More than enough to leave behind a legacy. And more than enough to remind my daughter that money isn't what makes you valuable, but assuming someone doesn't have it might be what makes you small. I sat down on the couch, opened my laptop, and began to type. Not a confrontation, not a warning, just a quiet plan. It was time to act, but not with words, with presence. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, golden and calm, but my mind was already racing. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing my second cup of coffee, my laptop open in front of me. The night after that dinner had been long, restless and quiet, filled with more reflection than sleep. I had replayed Avery's words over and over in my mind, not because I didn't believe them, but because I finally did. Fully. I was done trying to earn my place in a family that had decided I was nothing more than a footnote. What came next wasn't revenge. It wasn't even pride. It was something else. Something rooted in dignity and clarity. If they were going to write me out of their story, I was going to write my own. I clicked open Facebook. I barely used it, except to like Zoe's recital videos or check birthdays. But Avery lived on it. Her entire life was curated for admiration. I typed her name into the search bar and clicked. Her profile loaded instantly. It was all there. All of it. The first photo I saw was of her and Logan clinking champagne flutes at some upscale restaurant. Their captions a neat little summary of the life they wanted people to envy. Prepping for paradise, it read. 1 week to go. Grand Wailea, here we come. I clicked through. Avery had posted the airline booking. Logan had shared the hotel confirmation. First class, American Airlines Flight 847. Departing Thursday morning, 7:15 a.m. Arrival in Honolulu at 11:30 a.m. Room, oceanfront suite, Napa Tower, Grand Wailea. Activities listed out in hashtags hack snorkeling, sunset cruise, spa weekend. Logan's posts were even more detailed, down to gate numbers and room views. I shook my head and almost laughed. In my tech days, we spent thousands hiring people to find out this kind of information. Now, people just gave it away for free. I opened a blank document and started typing. Flight AA847, departure Thursday 7:15 a.m., arrival 11:30 a.m. local time. Hotel Grand Wailea Oceanfront Suite, Napa Tower. Activities: Friday snorkeling tour, Saturday spa day, Sunday sunset dinner cruise. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't know what the plan was yet, not completely, but I knew I wasn't going to sit in this house and be forgotten while my daughter lived out her version of the perfect family without me. I thought about what Margaret would say. Something gentle but firm. Show, don't tell. It was one of her favorite phrases. When Avery was little, she used it every time there was a tantrum, every time words failed. Show her, she'd whisper to me in the kitchen. Don't try to explain. Just show her what love looks like. This time, it wasn't about love. It was about respect. I needed someone who could help, discreetly, with taste, and above all, someone who wouldn't run back to Avery with every detail. Someone who still remembered me as more than Logan's wife's mother. I scrolled through my old contacts, stored on a spreadsheet I'd kept updated for years. Then I saw it. Andrew Palmer, Logan's father, Avery's father-in-law. We'd always gotten along, surprisingly well. Andrew had been in luxury travel for most of his life. Group tours, VIP packages, private bookings. Retired now, but still sharp, still connected. We used to chat about gardening and crossword puzzles during family gatherings, back when I was still invited. I picked up the phone and called. He answered on the second ring. Lorraine, he said warmly. What a surprise. Everything okay? Yes, I said. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Not at all. Just trimming some roses. What's going on? I hesitated, then spoke evenly. I need a little travel advice and some discretion. His tone shifted immediately, not with suspicion, but with curiosity and respect. All right, you've got it. I'm planning a trip, I said. Same week as Avery and Logan's, to Hawaii. There was a pause. Oh, he said. That's a surprise. They don't know, and I'd like to keep it that way. Understood, he said slowly. Do you need help with accommodations? Yes, something nearby, just as nice. Maybe a little more private, and if possible, a suite. Well, he said thoughtfully, the Fairmont Kealani is only a few miles up the coast from the Grand Wailea. Quieter, more understated, but still 5-star. They have a presidential suite, oceanfront, concierge, private entrance. I still know someone on the management team there. That sounds perfect. I can check availability. And one more thing, I added. Do you happen to know the room Avery's family booked? He was quiet for a moment, then answered in a low voice. Napa Tower, room 412, oceanfront, full activity package. Of course. Lorraine, he said gently, are you sure about this? I am. He didn't question me again. All right, I'll make some calls. Thank you, Andrew. I mean it. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window and stared out at the backyard. The roses were blooming, just like his. Margaret's garden was still alive, even if she wasn't. The children used to run through those flower beds, picking petals and pretending they were fairies. Now, they were being told their grandmother didn't belong in the picture. But I was still here. The phone rang again within an hour. Lorraine, Andrew said, you've got the suite, May 15th through 22. Full oceanfront, private check-in, helicopter access available. They'll arrange the pickup directly from Honolulu Airport. Perfect. The staff will treat you like royalty, he added. Are you planning to meet them there? No, I said. That's not the point. All right, he said, understanding. I'll send you the confirmation. And Lorraine, I hope this brings you whatever clarity you're looking for. It will, I said. I ended the call and stared at the travel document he sent me. The suite cost more than Avery's entire trip, I was sure. But I didn't care. It wasn't about money. It was about position, about standing in the light instead of the corner. I opened another browser tab and typed Private Jet Charter Portland to Honolulu. Several options popped up, and I began the next step. Quiet Power doesn't announce itself. It arrives, and I was going to arrive in style. The knock on the front door wasn't like the ones from delivery drivers or neighborhood kids selling fundraiser cookies. It was sharper, faster, and insistent, with no pause between raps. I already knew who it was. I didn't rush. I took one last look at the open suitcase on the hallway bench. Half-packed, neatly folded clothes inside, my leather travel folder resting on top. Everything was calm, me included. I opened the door. Avery stood there in a sleeveless blouse and dark sunglasses, one hand already on her hip, the other gripping the handle of her oversized tote. Her lips were tight, her chin slightly lifted, and her whole body buzzed with unspoken accusation. Without waiting for an invitation, she stepped inside. I shut the door behind her gently. Her heels clicked across the hardwood as she moved down the hallway and caught sight of the suitcase. She stopped dead. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then she turned to face me, the disbelief already rising in her voice. Seriously, Mom? I said nothing. I walked past her, calm as always, and gently closed the zipper of the side pouch. She followed me with her eyes, then gestured toward the suitcase like it was radioactive. What is this? Are you packing? For what? Hawaii? Yes, I said simply. I'm going on a trip. She blinked, the response not computing. The same week we're there? Yes. She let out a harsh breath and shook her head. You've got to be kidding me. Are you trying to follow us? I straightened up and met her eyes. No, Avery. I planned a vacation for myself. She laughed. Not humorously, but like someone on the edge of shouting. You're unbelievable. You found out everything. You looked at our posts, our itinerary, and then you decided to just insert yourself? I didn't look at anything you didn't publicly share, I said gently. And I made my own arrangements. Why this week? She snapped. Why this island? Why now? I didn't answer right away. I walked toward the small table near the door and checked my folder, passport, confirmations, documents, everything in order. She followed. You think this is cute? Some kind of dramatic entrance? You don't belong on this trip, Mom. It's not for you. We didn't invite you for a reason. I didn't flinch. I'm not expecting an invitation. Then why go at all? She demanded. You could have gone next month. Or last year. Or literally anywhere else. You chose this because you wanted to make a scene. I met her glare, steady and calm. No. I chose this because I wanted sun, peace, and the ocean. Just like you. Her hands went to her hips again. This is not okay. It's not normal. Logan's parents are going to be there. What do you think they're going to say when you show up at the same resort? I'm not staying at your resort. She froze. What? I have a reservation elsewhere. A quiet resort up the coast. I won't be interfering with your plans. She narrowed her eyes, scanning my face. How did you even afford this? I gave her a faint smile. I managed. She took a step closer, her tone turning from angry to suspicious. What does that mean? Are you dipping into retirement? Did you take out some loan? You're always talking about budgeting, about keeping things modest. Now suddenly you're taking luxury vacations? I never said I couldn't afford more, I replied. I just chose not to. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. This is ridiculous. You're too old for this kind of thing, Mom. You're not thinking straight. You're going to spend a fortune just to, what? Prove a point? I turned away from her, carefully placing the folder inside my carry-on. I'm not proving anything. You're stalking us. I turned back slowly. That's a serious word, Avery. Well, it fits, she said, arms crossed. You're acting completely irrational. This is a family trip. Logan planned it for months. We finally get to relax. And now you're showing up with your passive-aggressive smile, pretending to be independent while clearly trying to disrupt everything. I'm not disrupting anything, I said quietly. You think this won't make people talk? She snapped. What do you think Logan's parents will say? Or the kids? What am I supposed to tell them? That you're enjoying your vacation, I said simply. And that I am too. No, she said flatly. No, that's not happening. If I see you even once while we're there, we'll leave. I mean it. We'll cut the trip short and come home. I looked at her, and for a moment I saw something raw beneath the anger. Fear, maybe. Fear that the version of me she had painted for the world, small, old, tired, was no longer fitting the narrative. Fear that people might notice. I won't be looking for you, I said, but you'll be there. Yes. She stepped closer. Why are you doing this to me? I almost laughed, but didn't. To you? Yes, Mom. To me. You're trying to embarrass me. No, I said. I'm just not hiding anymore. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the suitcase, then at the framed photo of Zoe on the wall, then back at me. She looked like she didn't know what to say next, which was rare for her. I reached for my light jacket hanging on the coat rack and folded it gently into the suitcase. The Pacific Ocean is wide, Avery, I said softly. I think there's room enough for both of us. Her jaw tightened. Don't go. I am. She picked up her tote with sharp, jerking movements, knocking one of the bags off the bench. A small sunscreen bottle rolled across the floor. Neither of us picked it up. I can't believe you're doing this, she said. I said nothing. This is going to ruin everything. I looked at her carefully, or it might not change anything at all. She glared, stormed to the door, and yanked it open. Don't expect us to clean up after you when this backfires, she called as she stepped out. I won't. The door slammed hard behind her, shaking the frame slightly. I walked over, picked up the sunscreen, and set it on the bench beside the bags. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway, the engine roaring louder than it needed to. And then, once she was gone, I sat back down on the bench, zipped the suitcase, and quietly smiled to myself. She had said what she needed to say, and I had finally said what I needed to say too. Without shouting, without cruelty. Just one simple truth. There's room enough in this world for both of us, but that doesn't mean I'll keep living in her shadow. The morning after Avery's visit was quiet, still holding the echo of her slammed door. I moved through my routine like normal. Fed the cat, made a soft-boiled egg, watered the hydrangeas on the back porch. But everything felt just slightly off, as if the house had shifted during the night. The air was heavier somehow, and my mind kept replaying the moment she stood in the doorway, her voice sharp, her eyes almost scared. I was zipping up my suitcase for the last time when the phone rang. The sound startled me. Not because it was unexpected. I'd set the volume higher the night before in case the car service called, but because of what it might mean. I walked over, checked the screen. Andrew Palmer. I answered with my usual calm. Good morning, Andrew. His voice came warm, familiar. Lorraine, hi. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, I said. I was just finishing up a few things. There was a pause, the kind that always comes before something delicate. Grace and I were talking this morning, he said, and we just wanted to check in. I froze in place, the cord of my charger still dangling from my hand. Check in? I repeated. Yes. It's just, well, Avery mentioned a few things that worried us. Another pause. She said you've been having some trouble with your heart, some dizzy spells, that your doctor told you to rest, maybe avoid travel for a while. I didn't respond right away. My grip on the phone tightened. Andrew's voice softened. Grace was especially concerned. She asked if we should come by this week, maybe help with groceries, or see if you need anything lifted or fixed around the house. I closed my eyes. Slowly, a slow breath out. There it was. The story. The fiction Avery had crafted so cleanly, so effortlessly, she'd convinced even the most sensible people I knew that I was withering. A part of me wanted to laugh. The other part, a colder, older part, wanted to scream. Instead, I stepped toward the kitchen window and looked out at the garden. The same roses I'd tended for years were in bloom, strong, blooming on time, exactly as they were meant to. I let the view ground me. That's very thoughtful of you, I said at last, keeping my tone soft. Truly. We just want to help, Andrew said. I mean the way Avery described it. Lorraine, she made it sound serious. We were surprised to hear you weren't coming to Hawaii, but once she explained, well, we figured it made sense. I felt something settle in my chest. Not sorrow, not even betrayal, just a strange, hollow awareness that this had gone deeper than I expected. She said I wasn't coming because I'm sick, I asked gently. Yes, he said. She said you'd been seeing doctors, that it had been getting worse, that you didn't want to burden anyone. I looked down at the counter, where my printed flight confirmation sat tucked beneath my wallet. The private jet, the suite at the Fairmont, the helicopter transfer. The only burden I felt right now was the weight of pretending I hadn't heard what I just heard. Well, I said after a moment, my voice softer now, careful. There are good days and bad days. Andrew's voice warmed. Of course. That's understandable. Grace and I just wanted you to know we're thinking of you. If there's anything you need, truly, please ask. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. After a few more pleasantries, we ended the call. I stood there in the kitchen, still holding the phone to my ear long after the line had gone silent. I had prepared myself for many things when I decided to take this trip. I had not prepared for this. I hadn't expected her to build an entire story about my decline. A careful narrative of a mother who was no longer sharp, no longer capable, no longer needed. I hadn't expected her to use sympathy as a weapon, to cast herself as the devoted daughter making hard decisions, shielding her frail mother from the world. But it made perfect sense, because when people hear a mother wasn't invited, they question the child. When they hear she's too sick to travel, they offer sympathy. No questions, no blame, just nods and lowered eyes and quiet praise for Avery's strength. I pressed the phone to my chest and stared at nothing for a long moment. So that was the plan. Not just to exclude me, but to do it gracefully, with a bow tied in pity and obligation. To build herself a version of the story where she was the caretaker and I was the burden. To protect her image, to control the narrative, and to make sure no one ever asked why I wasn't there in the first place. It was clever, it was calculated, and it was cruel. But it also gave me something I hadn't had before. Permission. Because now, when I stepped off that plane, healthy, clear-eyed, fully present, when I arrived at the Fairmont and was greeted by name, when the concierge took my bags and the staff showed me to the presidential suite, when I walked through those marble halls with quiet dignity and calm composure, the story would fall apart. Not because I told anyone, but because the truth would no longer match the fiction. And that's the thing about lies dressed as concern. They only work until the person they're about walks in and stands tall. I placed the phone down on the counter and walked back to my suitcase. I opened it, not because I needed to check anything, but because I needed to feel the weight of my own choice. Inside was everything I had packed with intention. Clean, neutral clothes, nothing showy. A good pair of sandals. The sun hat Margaret had bought me just before our last trip together, and the envelope tucked into the side pocket with my flight confirmation and resort reservation. I reached for it, opened it, and stared at the printed words, passenger, Lorraine Brooks, flight, private charter, citation X, departure, 9 a.m. Thursday, destination, Kahului, Maui, arrival transfer helicopter, Fairmont Kealani. I had kept the details simple. I hadn't told anyone, but now I was certain of something I'd only suspected before. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about erasing me. And I wasn't going to let it happen. I placed the envelope back into the suitcase, zipped it closed, and smoothed the fabric with my hand. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to fight. The lie would unravel on its own. All I had to do was show up. And I would, quietly, confidently, because I wasn't sick. I wasn't weak, and I wasn't gone. The hum of the engines was low, steady, almost soothing. I sat alone in the cream leather seat, my hands resting in my lap, the smooth vibrations of the jet humming beneath me like a quiet reminder. I had arrived on my own terms. The Citation X wasn't the largest aircraft in the sky, but it was sleek, fast, and purposeful, like the version of myself I had slowly been reclaiming. The flight attendant, a kind woman named Janet, had offered champagne during takeoff. I had declined, opting instead for coffee served in a porcelain cup with real cream and a silver spoon. Margaret would have laughed at the details, but she also would have approved. Not because it was fancy, but because it was precise. Deliberate. Captain Morrison had informed me we would land just after 2 p.m. in Maui. From there, a private helicopter would take me directly to the Fairmont Kealani, a few miles up the coast from the Grand Wailea, where Avery and her family were supposed to be. I had planned it that way for a reason. Distance without absence. Close enough to be seen, far enough to remain separate. As the jet descended, I looked out the window and saw the Hawaiian coastline stretch out like a ribbon. Green cliffs, soft sands, turquoise water glistening under the sun. It was beautiful, peaceful, and nothing like the frozen dining room back in Portland where I'd been told I wasn't welcome. We touched down smoothly. The wheels kissed the runway, and the plane taxied toward a small private terminal tucked away from the usual crowd of commercial travelers. The door opened, and warm tropical air rushed in, soft and fragrant with sea salt and something floral I couldn't name. Janet smiled and handed me my handbag. "Enjoy your time here, Miss Brooks." "Thank you," I said quietly. On the tarmac, the helicopter was already waiting, its blades still. The pilot greeted me by name, helped me into the seat, and offered headphones. The moment we lifted into the air, I felt the ground fall away. Not just literally, but emotionally. The noise, the doubt, the memory of Avery's tight smile and Logan's smug comments, all of it faded below us. 15 minutes later, we hovered over the Fairmont. The resort was stunning. Whitewashed architecture, palm trees swaying in the breeze, infinity pools overlooking the ocean. As we descended onto the resort's private helipad, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle into my chest. I hadn't needed to announce anything. I had simply arrived. A golf cart waited at the pad to escort me to the main building. The driver, a young woman with sun-kissed cheeks and a genuine smile, greeted me as if I were a longtime guest. "Miss Brooks, welcome. We've been expecting you." She offered me chilled water and drove me along a winding path bordered by lush gardens and koi ponds. When we reached the entrance, a staff member opened my door and welcomed me by name again. Inside, the lobby was a calm, air-conditioned haven of marble floors, orchids, and soft instrumental music. It was elegant without being loud, luxurious without being cold. The check-in process was swift. My suite was ready. Oceanfront, as requested. A bottle of chilled sparkling water and a handwritten note from the manager waited inside. I took a moment to settle in, placing my bags by the dresser, smoothing the bedspread, and opening the balcony doors to let in the sea breeze. The sound of waves was steady, like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. It could have ended there, a quiet arrival, a peaceful retreat. But life, as always, had other plans. I was on my way back to the lobby later that afternoon, planning to grab a cup of tea and explore the resort's library, when I heard it. "Grandma!" The voice stopped me mid-step. I turned. Zoe came running across the polished lobby floor, her sandals slapping against the tile, her sun hat askew. Her smile lit up her whole face. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, she had thrown her arms around me. I hugged her tightly, heart thudding in my chest, not from surprise, but from something deeper. Relief, maybe. Connection. She pulled back and looked at me, wide-eyed and excited. "Are you staying here too?" she asked. "Did you change your mind?" Before I could respond, another voice called out, warm, surprised. "Lorraine?" Andrew stood nearby, wearing a short-sleeve button-down and linen pants, his sunglasses resting on his head. He looked at me with real pleasure and then a flicker of confusion. "Wow," he said. "You look great. Much better than we expected." I smiled, keeping my tone light. "The sea air works wonders." He walked over, shaking his head with a soft chuckle. "Well, I'll be. Avery didn't mention you were coming." "I didn't mention it to anyone," I said. "It was a last-minute decision." He nodded, still looking slightly stunned. "Funny thing, we weren't supposed to be here either. There was some kind of plumbing issue at the Grand Wailea. Whole tower's closed. Management relocated our party here this morning. They upgraded everything to make up for the inconvenience." "I see," I said calmly. "Well, this seems like a nice accident." "Serendipity," he said, smiling. "Grandma, do you want to come swim with us?" Zoe tugged at my hand. "Maybe a little later, sweetheart," I said. "I just got here." As if on cue, the elevator behind us chimed. Avery stepped out, wearing a crisp sundress and oversized sunglasses, a woven beach bag slung over her shoulder. Her expression when she saw me was immediate and fascinating. A flash of shock. Then quickly, expertly, she rearranged her face into a smile. "Mom?" she said brightly, crossing the lobby. "Oh my gosh, what a surprise!" She leaned in, kissing me on the cheek, her grip on my arm just a little too firm. Lovely surprise, Andrew added cheerfully. Just ran into her. That's amazing, Avery said, her voice just slightly too high. Wow, you look great, Mom. Thanks to rest and quiet, I said. Just got in this afternoon. Really? That's wonderful. Her smile was too wide now. We should catch up. You have a few minutes? Of course. She slipped her arm around mine, guiding me toward a side hallway near the spa entrance. Once we were out of sight, she dropped the smile like a mask. What are you doing here? She hissed. I raised my brows. Taking a vacation. Don't do this, she snapped. You told me you weren't coming. I never said that. You said you needed rest. I'm resting. You lied. I said I wouldn't be at your resort. She blinked. You were supposed to be miles away. Plans changed, for both of us apparently. She narrowed her eyes, voice lowering further. Who's paying for this? I tilted my head slightly. Does it matter? Yes, because this place isn't cheap, and you told Andrew you were on a budget. I smiled faintly. I am, a very well-managed one. She crossed her arms. Mom, seriously, did someone pay for this? Are you cashing in retirement? Is someone helping you? No, I said. I help myself. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my face. I didn't flinch. She stepped back, crossing her arms tightly. This is going to confuse the kids. I think they're happy to see me. She had no response to that. I let the silence settle between us. Well, I said at last, I should go unpack. You planned this, she said quietly. You knew we'd be here. I planned peace, I said. You just happened to arrive. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I was already walking away. The ocean breeze followed me back into the lobby, and for the first time in years, I felt entirely like myself again. Not a mother begging for space in her daughter's world, but a woman who had built her own and chosen when and where to walk into the light. Under the quiet canopy of palm trees, I wandered through the resort's garden path after dinner, needing air and distance. The day had been filled with forced smiles, accidental run-ins, and more hollow small talk than my soul could bear. I'd shared a dessert with Zoe by the pool, nodded through Logan's overenthusiastic retelling of a golf game, and accepted Avery's brittle invitations to join them for excursions I knew she hoped I'd decline. I just needed a moment. As I rounded the corner near the spa's outdoor lounge area, I heard voices, not unfamiliar ones. My steps slowed. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but something in Avery's tone stopped me. Not angry, not performative, just calculated. I paused, half shielded behind a flowering hedge, heart suddenly still. Logan's voice came next, lower, steady, and far colder than I was prepared for. She's not well, Avery. You were right. She's off. She told Andrew she was resting, then shows up in a private jet? Please. Avery exhaled sharply. It's worse than I thought. She's unpredictable now. There was a pause. I could hear clinking, perhaps glasses on a tray. I've been looking into it, Logan said. Guardianship isn't that complicated. If we can get 2 professionals to sign off, we can move on it. My blood ran cold. Avery spoke again. You think they'll agree she's incompetent? With the right story, yes. The thing is, she's not acting rationally. That's enough to start the process. She's alone. No husband, no other kids, no one else to contest it. Logan's voice dropped even lower. Once we have legal guardianship, we can manage the assets, control the accounts, sell the house. Move her somewhere quiet, Avery added. Private care, something secluded. She doesn't need a big place. She doesn't even drive anymore. She'll be safer, and we'll be able to breathe. There was a pause. I heard a soft laugh, hers. I told you the trip would make it easier to talk about this, Avery said. I didn't think it would be this easy, Logan replied. My legs were numb. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. A part of me wanted to burst in, call them out right there, but I knew better. Confrontation would only harden their resolve. They'd twist my words, say I misheard, accuse me of paranoia, ironically proving the very thing they wanted others to believe. I kept walking. Back to the suite, back to the silence of my room and the slow, steady hum of the ceiling fan. I sat at the edge of the bed, shaking, not from fear, but from a strange, rising clarity. They weren't just trying to exclude me. They were planning to erase me, piece by piece. Not out of hatred, not out of overt cruelty, but out of something colder, entitlement. A belief that my time was done, that my presence had become inconvenient, that I was, in their eyes, a resource to be managed, a problem to be handled. They had underestimated me. They always had. And now they were making the gravest mistake of all, assuming I wouldn't notice until it was too late. But I had noticed. I'd heard every word. And now I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't cry. I didn't call Margaret, though I longed to hear her voice. I didn't even pace. I sat still for a long time, watching the way the shadows moved across the floor as the night deepened. Eventually, I rose, walked to the desk, and pulled out my travel binder. Tucked in the back was the number for my attorney. Not for emergencies, but for life adjustments, as we used to call them. I wrote a single line on the notepad beside me. Time to protect what matters. Then I folded the page and placed it inside my wallet. I knew now, without a doubt, that they had shown me exactly who they were, and I wasn't going to fight them with noise or rage. I would fight them with preparation, with precision, and when the moment came, I would not raise my voice. I would simply raise the truth and let it stand tall beside me. Of course, here's the full script for Part 8 based on the detailed outline and character continuity. The morning sunlight poured into the suite in golden waves. It danced across the tile floor, brushed the gauzy curtains, and touched my face like a soft whisper, asking, "Are you ready?" I was. I rose early, not out of anxiety, but with purpose. Every movement was deliberate, calm, quiet, measured. My body felt light, but not because I was free of burdens. It was because I had finally chosen which ones to set down. After making myself a cup of tea, I walked over to the desk and opened my travel binder, a small, structured leather case. Margaret had given it to me the year we sold the company, said every woman needs one place where she keeps her exit plan. Back then, I laughed, not understanding just how true those words would become. I pulled out the schedule for my return flight. Jet confirmed. Same pilot, same crew. Thursday, 11 a.m. departure from the private airstrip. Helicopter transfer from the resort to the jet, coordinated and discreet. Car service on the mainland, ready to meet me. No disruptions. No room for surprises. Everything was as I wanted it, elegant, invisible, and completely under my control. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my encrypted email. A soft breeze rolled through the open balcony doors, rustling the papers on the desk. I took that as a nudge. I opened a blank message addressed to Charles Whitmore, my attorney of nearly 15 years. A man with silver hair and a brain sharper than any blade. He'd been there through the company's founding, the acquisition, and the sale. He had been there when Margaret and I decided to hold the money quietly, not to hide it, but to see the truth of those around us. Subject line, final updates urgent. I typed slowly but clearly. Hi, Charles. Please confirm all documents have been updated as discussed. In addition, 1. Remove Avery Brooks from all primary beneficiary status. 2. Ensure remaining assets are directed toward a charitable foundation to be formed in my name, with Zoe and Jack as future trustees. 3. Confirm the new power of attorney and medical directive paperwork is in effect, with no role granted to Avery or Logan. 4. Transfer real estate deed from Portland property into trust. Let me know if anything requires signature upon my return. Please keep all changes confidential until instructed otherwise. Best, Lorraine. I read it twice, not with bitterness, but with certainty. Avery thought I was asleep. She thought I had given up, that I was old, confused, vulnerable. She forgot who raised her. She forgot the woman who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts, who protected employees through 2 recessions, who stayed up nights reading every legal line before she ever signed her name. She forgot the version of me I had tucked away when I became just mom. But I remembered her now, and she was back. I clicked send. Then I opened my phone and typed a new text to Avery. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting the words form slowly. Morning, sweetheart. Not feeling my best today. Staying in the room to rest. Don't worry, the staff is very kind. I might leave a little earlier than planned. Hope you enjoy your snorkeling this afternoon. Love. Mom, I reread it before sending. It was the message she expected. Gentle, vague, a little scattered. Just believable enough. Sometimes silence is more powerful than confrontation. Sometimes letting someone believe they've won is the first step to taking back everything. The message sent, I set the phone down and walked to the mirror. I looked at myself, not to adjust makeup or check for signs of age, but to look, to really see. And there I was, the same woman who had weathered storms no one saw, who had held back when she could have shouted, who had walked away from applause because she didn't need it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. And being awake meant I could finally move, carefully, quietly, with precision. By mid-morning, I had packed most of my belongings. The resort staff had already confirmed my helicopter pickup. My room had been prepaid, no charges left behind, no trail for Avery to twist later. As I zipped up the suitcase, I paused to tuck one last thing inside, a copy of the birthday card Zoe had given me 3 months ago. A handmade one, with a drawing of the two of us in her childish handwriting. To the best grandma ever. I hope I grow up like you. I smiled. This wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. Not the kind written in money, but in memory. In who Zoe and Jack would grow up to become. In what they would remember about their grandmother, not what they were told. That afternoon, I walked the beach one last time. The sun warmed my shoulders, the sand cool beneath my feet. I passed families laughing, couples reading, children building sandcastles that would soon wash away. And I thought to myself, let them think I left because I was tired. Let them think I went home early to rest. Let them believe their plan worked. Because when the storm finally hits, they won't see it coming. Not with thunder, but with silence, with signatures, with peace. Under the soft haze of the Hawaiian morning, I stood by the front entrance of the Fairmont Kealani, waiting. Everything was in place. The car, a sleek black Lincoln Navigator with a quiet professional driver, idled at the curb. My suitcase had been discreetly loaded. The concierge had confirmed my checkout with a gentle nod. The sky above was a bright, cloudless blue. Calm, unassuming, much like myself these days. I wore a simple linen dress, soft beige, the kind that didn't call attention but still spoke of grace. My sunglasses rested easily on the bridge of my nose. The only sound was the roll of the surf in the distance and the faint music playing from the hotel lobby behind me. From across the courtyard, I spotted them. Avery, Logan, Zoe, and Jack emerging from the resort lobby, trailed by a bellhop dragging their luggage on a brass cart. Avery looked flustered. She was barking into her phone while adjusting the strap on her beach tote. Logan trailed behind, checking something on his watch. The kids, sun-kissed and sleepy, trudged beside them in matching floral backpacks. And then Zoe looked up. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Grandma," she called, breaking into a run. "You're still here." Jack ran close behind, his flip-flops slapping loudly on the stone walkway. I knelt down just in time to catch them both in my arms. "You said you were leaving early," Zoe said, breathless, clinging to my shoulders. "I am, sweetheart," I said with a smile. "Just leaving a little differently than you expected." "Are you going to the airport too?" Jack asked. "Are we on the same plane?" I glanced up as Avery and Logan approached, their pace slowing the moment they registered the scene in front of them. Avery's sunglasses did little to hide the alarm flickering in her eyes. Logan's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "I have a plane waiting," I said calmly to the kids. "A small one, just for me." Zoe's eyes grew wide. "You have your own plane?" I smiled gently. "Yes, darling, I do." Jack looked awestruck. "Like with a pilot and everything?" "Exactly." Avery cleared her throat sharply. "Mom, can I talk to you for a moment?" I turned toward her, still crouched by the kids. "Of course," I said, rising slowly. She moved in close, her voice low but tinged with rising panic. "You chartered a private plane?" "Yes." Her jaw clenched. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I didn't think anyone would care," I said evenly. "You made it clear this trip was for your family." "But, Mom, how are you paying for this?" I tilted my head slightly. "Don't worry about it." Logan stepped forward, his voice unsteady. "Lorraine, there's no need for this show. If you were feeling left out, we could have made space." "I'm not performing," I said simply. "This isn't a show, it's just how I prefer to travel." Zoe tugged on my sleeve again. "Can we come see your plane, Grandma, please?" I looked down at her bright little face, then at Jack, who was already half turned toward the waiting car. "If it's okay with your parents," I said softly. Zoe turned quickly to Avery. "Please, Mom, just to see it, please." Avery hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly as she fumbled with her sunglasses. I could feel it, the crumbling of the narrative, the illusion she'd spun so carefully for everyone around her, that I was frail, forgetful, fading into the background, that I couldn't possibly afford a 5-star resort, let alone a private jet, that I was someone to be pitied, sheltered, controlled, and now With two excited children at my side, she couldn't find the words to explain the truth. Not without admitting the lie. I turned and walked toward the car. The driver opened the door for me. The resort staff had already notified the helipad. Zoe and Jack followed, holding hands. Behind us, I heard Logan mutter, "What the hell is happening?" When I reached the open door, I turned to face them one last time. Avery took a tentative step forward. "Mom," she said, forcing a brittle smile. "There's room, right? I mean, if there's space, maybe we can ride with you. The kids would love that. It'd be special." Her voice wavered on that last word. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once held my hand when she couldn't sleep. The teenager who slammed doors when I didn't agree with her. The adult who told people I was too delicate to travel. For a moment, I searched for something inside me. Sympathy, anger, regret. What I found was clarity. I smiled. Small, steady. "You don't have enough money for this flight," I said quietly. Avery blinked. Stunned. I stepped into the car and the door closed behind me. As the car pulled away, I looked back just once through the tinted glass. Zoe was waving. Jack held his hand high, mimicking a plane in flight. Logan stood frozen. And Avery, she was finally silent. Sometimes the loudest response is the one you never raise your voice to give. Of course. Here's part 10 of the story, written in a warm, introspective, and emotionally grounded tone, 1,500 words, suitable for voiceover. The air in Portland had a bite to it that Hawaii never did. That first morning back, I stepped outside with my coffee and wrapped a shawl around my shoulders. The maple tree in the front yard had started to turn, its leaves a soft warning that autumn was on its way. It had been 4 days since I returned. 4 quiet, thoughtful days. I hadn't posted a single photo. I didn't tell anyone where I went or how I got there. There had been no announcement, no press release, no grand gesture, just a woman, her silence, and a jet built for someone who finally knew her own worth. And then came the knock. It was a tentative one. Not urgent, not angry, almost embarrassed. When I opened the door, there stood Avery and Logan. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but emotionally. Her chin was slightly lowered, her lips pressed together. Logan stood a few steps behind her, quiet for once. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Come in," I replied, stepping aside. We sat in the living room. No one touched the coffee I offered. Avery kept glancing at the family photo above the fireplace, the one from when she was 12, wearing braces and a crooked ponytail, sitting in Margaret's lap. "I owe you an apology," she finally said. I nodded, but said nothing. I wanted to give her the space to fill her own silence. "I've been awful," she continued. "Arrogant, selfish, and She stopped to breathe. "I assumed you were small because I needed you to be, because it made me feel bigger." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I just wanted to believe you needed us," she whispered, "that you weren't doing well, that we were important." "You are important," I said, "but I didn't act like it," she replied, voice cracking. I sat still, letting the weight of it settle between us. She looked up. "The plane, the resort, the way the kids looked at you, like you were magic. And I wasn't proud. I was ashamed of myself, because I realized I never once asked how you were doing these last few years." Her voice broke on the last word, and then she cried, not loudly, just a quiet stream, hands in her lap, head bowed low. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I am so, so sorry." I sat across from her, my heart steady. "You asked once how I could afford all of it," I said gently. She looked up, wiping her face. 6 years ago, just before Margaret passed, we sold the company," I said. $15 million, quiet sale, clean exit. We kept it private. Not because we didn't trust you, but because Margaret wanted us to see the truth of how people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer. Avery stared at me, wide-eyed. 15 million? I nodded. "And for 3 years, I watched. Not to test you, not to trap you, just to understand." She swallowed hard. "You distanced yourself," I continued, "not because of anything I did, but because it was easier to paint me as fragile, as a burden. That way you didn't have to be responsible for seeing me." Logan shifted in his seat, shame flickering in his posture. "I understand," I said. "We all protect ourselves in different ways, but it doesn't make it right." Avery looked devastated. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out an envelope. "This is a copy of the updated trust," I said. "Your name has been removed. Everything now goes to Zoe and Jack, contingent upon them becoming kind, ethical adults. If they're raised to know the value of humility and truth, they'll receive everything. Avery took the envelope in shaking hands, but didn't open it. I'm not punishing you, I said gently. I'm protecting the future. She nodded slowly, tears still sliding down her cheeks. But I forgive you, I added. Her head jerked up. Mom, you do? Of course. Her breath shuddered. Forgiveness is love, I said. But money is stewardship. I'll always love you, but I won't fund someone who saw me as disposable. She sobbed then, and this time I moved across the room and held her. We sat there for a long time. Later, after they left, the house felt quieter. Not in a lonely way, just still. A peace had settled. I stood by the window, watching their car disappear down the street. The sunlight hit the coffee table just right, lighting up a framed photo Zoe had given me, the two of us at her school play beaming. My phone buzzed. A text from Avery. It read, "Thank you for giving me a chance." I replied, "Next time, just tell me the truth. I can hear it." And I meant it. Every word. Thank you for listening to Lorraine's story. Have you ever felt quietly cast aside by the people you once held closest? Have you ever chosen dignity over confrontation because you knew your worth didn't need to be shouted? If this story touched something in you, you're not alone. These aren't just revenge stories. They're stories of reflection, resilience, and quiet strength. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Has a moment of silent courage ever changed the way others saw you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss more powerful family stories like this. Stories of betrayal, healing, and the quiet kind of revenge that comes from living well.